Larry, Andy, welcome to Exeter University campus. 3 gigs from the end of this tour. How's it been going so far?
Really good. Lots of hot, sweaty gigs that have hurt. But it's been good fun.
I heard there was a hot, sweaty incident at Leeds cockpit.
Yeah.
Something about a big bloke stage diving.
They fit about 500 people into a railway arch with no barrier, which is the Leeds cockpit, and this bloke stage diver looked like a marine. He was huge, and I think he killed several underage revellers at the front.
And the kind of venues that you've been playing, including tonight, you're going for the smaller, sweaty ones on purpose, yeah?
Yeah. The idea was to do kind of like a 19, 20 date tour of the UK, just all in small kind of 500 to 1,000 people clubs.
Right.
So it's been a good laugh, and we haven't done that for a while, so
right.
It's been an experience getting used to kind of being so hot again,
right.
Smaller gigs, but it's been great.
And that's where you started out, and that's
sure.
Yeah. And you toured the UK earlier this year as well, didn't you, for the Shatterproof tour?
Yeah.
That was bigger venues,
that was bigger venues, production tour, so this is a very different thing. And on this one we're getting to try out a lot of new stuff, like stuff which we haven't been recorded yet.
Right.
So we've been playing a lot of that every night just to experiment with it.
I read that you've written about sort of 14 songs already for the next album.
Yeah.
Written and demoed, yeah.
Tell us, how does a 100 Reasons song come together?
It's different ways, really. We tend to write, we have to be in a room all together, and we have to spend a lot of time with each other, because we don't sort of write at home and bring it in. It's like we have to jam out stuff and work off each other. So when we're not touring, we rehearse 5 days a week, fairly religiously, and constantly demo and constantly write, and that's what we do.
If there's somebody particularly specialised in the lyrics, I read that Colin is more the lyrics person.
Yeah. Who write the lyrics, because he has to sing them, so
it's more personal to him.
Yeah.
But we, all of us in the band, we kind of play a lot of instruments, kind of each. So it's quite good. Like Larry would get on the drum kit, maybe, and I'll pick up a guitar, or whatever. So it's kind of those different ways of writing music in the band, so it's quite exciting.
So at rehearsal, sometimes you switch instruments completely in just for
a lot of the time, actually.
Yeah, quite a lot of the time.
Have you thought about doing that on stage?
Not yet.
Not
you
tight,
might go
tight
there.
enough,
And after the first tour now, going right back to the beginning, there were 2 bands. There was Jetpack and Floor. Can you take us through how 100 Reasons came together?
Well, we used to play a lot of kind of club shows. There was 4 of us in Floor, basically, and Larry was in Jetpack.
Right.
And we kind of knew each other through kind of playing gigs in the underground. We both had the same managers, Gravity Management, and basically Floor were breaking up, Jetpack were breaking up.
What kind of music was it that you were playing?
Well, Jetpack was we were a 3-piece and sort of pop punk and that sort of thing, and they were, I don't know.
We were heavier, kind of maybe like Deftones style, Tool, quite a bit heavier than Jetpack were.
Right.
So I know we came up with something halfway between the two.
Yeah, we kind of brought it all together.
Labels are something just on the internet, reading about 100 Reasons. The labels that you've had thrown at you, are there any of those labels like emo rock or emo pranksters or post-punk hardcore, or are there any of that? Do you agree with labelling?
No, not really. Well, I do agree with it, because you got to do it, but it's for record shops to do, really, not for people in bands. You should never label your own music, even if you think it could be labelled. It's like you have to think outside what you're doing. So we don't bother.
And the heavier end where you came from, Andy, what were your big influences in the 90s, 80s, even 70s, maybe, going back that far, that you've been listening?
When I was younger, I kind of grew up listening to kind of indie and kind of grunge music.
So it's Pearl Jam and
Nirvana. I liked Guns N' Roses as well, and back in the day, everyone went through the Guns N' Roses phase.
Right.
And
everyone came out the other side.
I still like Guns N' Roses now.
Right.
I guess just all that sort of thing, all the normal stuff that everyone likes, I think.
Yeah. And Brit Rock, because you're now called the Champions of Brit Rock. It's another label that you've got, the Champions of Brit Rock.
Brit Rock's probably my favourite one of everything, because we're British and we're rock.
Right.
So that sort of makes sense.
Right.
Post-ironic emo core, or whatever the other one was. I don't know about that.
I think we like to label ourselves as a rock band because
Yeah.
it's simple. Then you can be anything within
Right.
rock.
And another band that would label themselves as a rock band are the Darkness.
Yeah.
What are your feelings
we're-
about their fortunes in the last couple of years?
Fair play to them.
Yeah, fair play.
I think they're hilariously brilliant as a band.
Very talented as well.
Yeah.
You've seen those, if
Yeah,
you watch
I
those guys live, pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Right.
they're definitely a giggle. I don't think I catch myself listening to it at home, but they're good fun to watch.
And you're not surprised that they made it through that big?
No, not at all.
No.
I mean, I remember when we first heard of them, they were playing like the Monarch in Camden, and we got what single was it? We got the promo of it. I think it was I Believe in a Thing Called Love, and we got that and listened to it and going, well, it's obvious it's going to be big because it was so catchy.
Right. Right. Are you the tunesmith in
The
the band?
tunesmith?
Yeah. When you said catchy, about
Yeah.
catchy melodies and choruses, is there someone in the band that goes for the choruses? And
We all do, really.
yeah.
I think. I mean, I mean, part of how we enjoy music, I think, is that it has to be inclusive and you have to get into it. And you can do interesting things, but I tend not to be in the bands who deliberately try and alienate people or be above people or be too intellectual, because music is about collective enjoyment, and that stuff is fun to make, and it's fun to be self-indulgent and stuff. But that's stuff that I tend to do at home in my bedroom and not really force anyone else to listen to. You know what I mean? So I think for us, if your music can get to people in the best way possible, that's quite a challenge to write songs that will immediately connect with people.
Right.
And I think that's a lot harder than just writing music that's overcomplicated.
And going back to again the roots of the band, after you sort of come together, how long were you say you rehearse 5 days a week when you're not gigging? How long did you spend in rehearsals before that first infamous demo that went to Kerrang?
About a week.
Yeah, that was really quick. I mean,
Not long.
It took us ages to record the first album though.
Right.
Like we were a band for like 2 years, weren't we? Or
Yeah.
a year and a half maybe.
You've got your
before
whole
we-
life to write your first record.
Yeah.
Mm.
Heard that said.
I mean, yeah, that first demo was kind of really quick, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I don't think none of those songs made it any further than that, I think. And it's like we have such a high turnover of songs. It's the thing. So we'll write, we drop as many songs as we record. We'll go through a lot of songs, and I think that's something we've always done. And even from the start, I mean, we probably we'd written 3 complete sets or 3 complete albums worth of songs by the time we did our first record. And
Right.
I think that's a good way of doing it. I mean, if something's not working, we tend to drop it, and if something is requiring too much work, that normally means it's not good enough. You know what I mean? That's how we tend to view it. So we go through a lot of material.
How did you come to Fierce Panda's attention? How did they get to it?
That was a gig in London. We were supporting a band called Kitty, and it was quite a big gig for them. It was quite a big gig in London on that night, And
It was like our fourth or fifth show ever.
Yeah.
Supporting them at the garage.
and Kerrang kind of got us the show, and there was loads and loads of record companies at the show, so it was kind of a really good thing for us. I think that's pretty much how the ball started rolling.
And
Right.
Simon Williams from Fierce Panda saw us at that and just really wanted to do a 7-inch. And
Right.
Fierce Panda's a great label. It was quite an honour to be approached by him because
Yeah.
he's got a good eye for stuff which is going to carry on. So
Right.
Yeah.
we jumped at the chance to do it.
And then, when you actually came together, did you see yourself very much in the indie kind of philosophy that you wanted to keep small and keep?
No,
we
Did
weren't
you
really.
see a
We didn't
major
really
on the
ever talk
horizon?
about it.
No, there's different ways of looking at it though. I think people often distinguish being sort of having ethics and being an indie band or an underground band as a separate thing to wanting to sell a lot of records, where
Right.
it's not. I mean, you can, we're an ambitious band and we want to do well and we want to go to as many countries as possible and get as big as we can be, but at the same time you can keep your ethics and you can keep the way you act as more like an indie band, and I don't think the two are mutually
Right.
exclusive. I think you
Right.
can operate in both ways. It's just about having respect for people around you and who you work with and the bands you play with.
Right.
Plus, at that stage as well, we hadn't even discussed where we wanted to go as a band or anything. I don't think we really ever have.
Yeah, I
have
think,
we?
we'd all been playing in bands for years and years. It's like, it's like a drug addiction really since you're sort of 15. And I think, in a lot of ways we started this band like we'd started any other band we'd been in since school, and then suddenly it was like, oh, this is actually quite good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the kind of extremes of material in some ways, you know, Avalanche
Yeah.
versus hardcore, and
That's what I really like about this band. Is, I mean, saying that we're just kind of rock music is a good thing, because we have things. On the first album, we've got a song called "Gone Too Far," which is
right,
really
heavy.
And yeah, then we've got Avalanche and Falter, which are kind of ballady type
Yeah.
songs.
And they're the last two tracks on the album, aren't they? Sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's quite nice to be able to do that, because
Yeah,
we
I mean,
don't pigeonhole ourselves, so we can do that sort of thing, you know.
Right,
The last reason we ever give for not doing a song is that, oh, it doesn't sound like us.
right.
Because I think that's a mistake as well. I mean, the only reason we'd not do a song is if it's shit. So
Right.
it's like, if it's good but it sounds a bit of a departure for us, then we'll still play it.
Right. And the time at Fierce Panda, how did you sort of come to Sony Columbia's attention?
A guy called Blair McDonald, who at that time was the MD of Columbia, saw us at that Kitty gig as well.
Right.
And he could see some potential in us, but he wasn't about to offer us a deal, because he was like, he said, you're good, but you're nowhere near ready. You need to go and tour, and you need to, sort yourselves out. So we're still a very young band, but he said, I'm going to keep an eye on you. And he did, and he kept coming to shows over the next year.
Right.
The 7-inch came out and did really well, that Fierce Panda 7-inch, and we went on touring and sort of growing as a band. And then he put an offer in at some point when he thought we were ready, and we owe him quite a lot, I think. And
Yeah,
right.
he's the person who first got us involved with Columbia, and things were great with Columbia when he was there. And he did. He came true to his word. He could see something in our band, and he kept at it.
And also, after we signed to Columbia as well, we kind of built things, I mean, kind of slowly, because it was about, 8 months to negotiate the deal.
Mm.
So we didn't have anything out, and then we released an EP on Columbia, Remus, and then between that and the album was like another year, was it?
Yeah, well, a few months of touring.
And then,
Right.
so we kind of wanted to build it slowly still, and we released kind of about 4 singles before an album came out, so we kind of built ourselves up.
Yeah.
We didn't want to just kind of rush in and record and release an album immediately.
And they deliberately didn't really market the first record. So that's something we didn't want to do, and it was all about poster campaigns and street teams and
Right.
sort of how you do it even if you weren't on a major, because we didn't want to suddenly be on a major and have this big marketing push, which
Right.
just, I don't know, makes bands look a bit stupid. I think they understood that we were the sort of band that would grow through live performance and playing in front of people, and that's how people would get into us, and
Right.
by building up a fan base and a main list on our website and everything. And that's how it all worked with that first record, and it
Right.
worked brilliantly, and it wasn't aggressive at all in how it was being pushed in people's faces. We just sort of let people come round to it, which I think
Right.
was really good.
The recording process from the Fierce Panda days, comparing that to the Columbia days and the debut album,
Yeah.
big difference. You had a producer from New York, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you record it in New York?
We did.
Yes,
We
yeah.
did both albums in New York.
Right.
In a studio called the Magic Shop with a man called Dave Sardi, which is something I'd wanted to do since I was about 17 when I first heard one of his records that he'd made there, and so that was a bit of a dream coming true for me, sitting on a plane.
Which record was that?
Orange 9mm, Tragic, I think it was the first record I heard that he did, which was
Right.
really great. I mean, no one's ever heard of them, but they were a brilliant band. And I don't know, that was that was a really strong moment for me, was going out there to make a record with him in that studio. Something I've been
Did you
thinking about
suggest
for years.
that he be used because of that?
Well,
Or?
we kind of all,
all
said
did,
it at the same
yeah.
time, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did the sort of, you say about the marketing and the way that Columbia marketed you,
Yeah.
were you ready for some heavy marketing?
No,
Were you
we didn't
prepared
want
for
that.
it?
Yeah.
We were kind of caught up in it all, really, weren't we?
Hmm.
It's kind of like, you can look back now and at what happened kind of then, and you think, wow, it was pretty fast actually, It
Yeah.
was quite fast from doing that first gig to kind of releasing an album. But at the time it kind of felt like we were building it all up nicely and all nice and slow up to the point when the album came out,
Yeah.
Right.
which was a celebration.
Yeah. It was.
And how many songs was Ideas Above Our Station whittled down from to the final 12? Can you remember about?
We actually went out with, I think we only went out with 13 to do, but that was just part of the recording process. But I said before that, we'd probably written 30 songs before we recorded that album that we dropped.
Right.
But there were only ever a sort of 12 or 13 that
Yeah.
were going to make it onto the record, and that's all we demoed.
Right.
But we did a lot of, I guess we did most of the pre-production ourselves just by touring and seeing what worked and what didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Andy, I think I read somewhere that you were truly gobsmacked by the amount sold and the rate at which Ideas sold.
It was unbelievable. I mean, it's kind of a dream come true for anyone who's been into music at at an early age and kind of going to gigs when you're 15, 16, and you never think for a minute that you're going to be like headlining the Astoria, you know, and selling. I mean, I think it's went on to sell like 100,000 in England, which is, you know. And I mean, the week the album came out, it went in the album charts at like number 5, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember everyone's calling each other, kind of being like.
We got a text message off our manager going, yeah, you've done 26,000 over the counter in 6 days or whatever it was, and it was just like, you know, I never thought I'd see that.
It's a pretty amazing feeling. You know, you can only ever dream of it happening.
Sony were expecting us to do that in 6 months. It was like,
Really? So they were as surprised as
yeah.
as you were?
Yeah.
So it must have reflected the gigging and the following that you'd built up during the last 2 years, the previous 2 years.
There was like a whole week where it seemed to be like a payoff, where we headlined the second stage at Ozfest, and we did our first ever headline show at the Astoria, and then the album came out all in a week, kind of thing, and that was probably the happiest time in the
And
band.
as the stage sets got more involved and expensive, was that something that you now had? The record company were throwing money at you, so you could.
As the what? Sorry.
Sorry.
As the stage.
The stage sets.
Oh right.
Yeah, the stage sets and the lyrics and the backdrops and things. And was that a record company input or was?
No, that was us. I mean, you have to do that when you start playing bigger halls. You get to the point where you can't just fill it by getting up there, chucking your amps on stage and playing. So, and I think
it was slightly tongue-in-cheek, wasn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it's quite tongue-in-cheek, but it's good.
Stairs.
It's good to go and see bands when they make a venue their own. You know, so you go there, and if it's a venue that you always go and see bands at, if you go in there and the band's made it look a little bit different, I think it makes me happy going to see bands like that, because it's like they put a bit of effort in and a bit of thought into playing. You know, and so that's the sort of thing we try and do. And yeah, it's got nothing to do with the record company. It's just you just try and think of something that you can do that's a little bit different.
Right. So 2002 must have been an absolutely fabulous year for you.
Yeah.
It was, you were absolutely riding a wave, yeah?
Yeah.
And when, if at all, did the pressure start coming from the record company, the classic pressure, which is, right, well, this is fabulous now, please, fabulous plus another 100,000?
I think we never really got that from the record label. Between the first album and the second album, Sony downsized, what they call it. They just sacked a load of people. So suddenly we were on a different record label with people that we'd never met before.
Right.
And that happened before we even recorded the second album.
Right.
And I don't think we got any pressure off them at that point, which probably wasn't a good thing, because it meant they weren't really thinking about it. And I think we sort of went from being Blair's band to being just sort of a band which no one there had anything really to do with.
Really?
Yeah, so in fact, for that whole second album campaign, there was probably quite a wall of silence from Sony. They were just sort of paying for it, but not really getting involved at all, which in some ways is great, because they just leave you there to get on with it, but it does make you think, well, is anyone even going to turn up at any point, you know? So
with the first album, there were A&R people who helped you make choices.
They didn't help us, but at least they'd be on the phone, and I mean, I remember
you could sound them out.
I mean, Blair, I mean, it's the guy who was running the company, would phone me up and go, oh, I'm thinking about Oratorio for the next single, what do you think? I'd be like, oh no, that's not, you know, I think we were going to go with this one. He's like, oh, all right, just wanted to check. You know what I mean? You have conversations like that with the guys running the label, and that's how it should be.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not about them telling you what to do or you telling them what to do. It's just, it all works well together. But that disappeared and all the people went.
That must have been a bit disconcerting, you know, because you were looking to produce something just as good, better, progress, etc.
I suppose it was a little kind of disheartening in a way, you know, because we went away and kind of recorded. We wrote the second album probably in about 3 months, I'd say, probably.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? We kind of went to a residential studio and kind of just demoed a lot of songs, and we weren't really feeling pressured at the time to come out with something exactly the same as Ideas Above a Station, because we were always kind of thinking about progressing, you know, like the next step.
Right.
And so no, it was kind of weird, because we kind of just went to New York and recorded it, and we had a visit from Columbia, and everyone was really happy about how everything was going. And then we got home and it kind of all went a bit weird.
Yeah. And then suddenly nothing, and we put the album out. The midweek, the record industry in its infinite wisdom works on midweek chart positions, which is just silly. But and that came out and it was number 20 in the main charts, and had done over many thousand in the first week. And after that, that's when it stopped. I think they saw the midweek and that was it. So by the next Monday, it was essentially over with them.
My goodness.
So they gave it, what, 5 days?
What was your, just emotionally, what was your initial
Well, it was a bit like,
reaction?
what's going on? You know, what are you doing? Have you got a plan? And just no one did. And it was a bit like, I don't know, I think we just ignored it for a bit, and then we just went on tour, and the tour was great and everything.
It's kind of weird because, as well, we kind of knew that we probably weren't going to be on Sony for much longer, and we kind of accepted
why was that?
But
Just because things didn't go.
when they stopped calling you, you know,
Right, yeah.
that they're not into it anymore, and so we were just thinking about what we were going to do next. We'd already, I think within about a month of the album being out, we'd pretty much written off Sony and were thinking about what we were going to do next year.
Right.
You know, which was still 6 months before we finally got dropped. But
Yeah.
it was like, you know, you just know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you just have to start planning for what's going to happen afterwards.
Did you enjoy the Shatterproof sessions as much as the Idea sessions?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, the making of the album was brilliant. And
Right.
I think we worked in a lot more depth than we did on the first record, which I think is maybe why it took people a few listens to get the new record. I mean, all the people that I know, all my friends are saying, well, you know, it takes a week of listening and you get it. It's not an instant album,
Right.
which is maybe what scared Sony off.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely not as immediate as
But
Ideas by the
we
Stage.
did
Yeah.
put a lot more work into it, and
Right.
there is a lot more depth, and I think it will have more longevity. But as I say, it wasn't as immediately catchy, so I think a lot of kids maybe on first listen would be like, oh, I'm not sure about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was I think that was what we wanted to do, and I think that's just about the progression of the band. And the thing that annoys me slightly about what's happening now with record companies making less money and being really scared of the internet when they shouldn't be, and all the rest of it is
Yeah.
they're expecting every album to be a hit, and I think bands should be allowed to progress. And it happens with so many bands now. It's like, well, if your last one doesn't do if this one doesn't do as well as the last one, it's over. It's like, well, what band's ever done that? It's like I think bands should be allowed to breathe and be allowed to develop and do albums which people might not get, and then do albums which, you know what I mean? It's just how it all works, and they obviously weren't going to think like that.
And just in terms of the band and the chemistry within the band, you know, in the short space of 5 years, you've been through a lot already.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
So just bringing us right up to date. You know, you mentioned you wrote 14 songs, demoed 14 songs during the summer. What's the feeling like being in the band this year? Which
It's kind of like a big rock cliche, because we were after what happened with us and Sony. It was kind of everyone was like really down in the dumps. You know, all kind of like, what's going to happen next? Are we still going to be a band? You know, everyone was kind of feeling really down about it all, which is a hard thing as well, because you know we're doing a dream job, and you almost feel bad about feeling bad, if you know what I mean. You're kind of like, how can I feel bad about this?
But when my mates are like, shut up, I've got to go work tomorrow.
Exactly. so you kind of get yourself together, and the rock cliche thing is we all went in the studio and it kind of clicked again. You know, we started writing music again.
right.
We suddenly
The smiles came back.
You realise what's important. It's like, what's important, a record deal or your band? And your band is. And a record deal, at the end of the day, it's easier for us to say because we've been through it and we've had a couple. It's like, they're not that important. They are at the start, but once you're a band like we are, an established band like we are, you can do without them, and they will come and go.
Right.
And it's not the end of the world losing one. I think it took us a couple of months to sort of get our heads around that and be like, well, this is just, you know, we've still got a lot of fantastic people that we work with. We've still got our press people who are an independent company,
Right.
our agent, our management, our publishing company, which is actually Blair McDonald now. It was published with him through Universal.
Right. Right.
We've still got all these people around us who are brilliant, and it's just the record deal. So it's
And
yeah, it
the
took us a
fan
while to
base
get
as
to
Well, I was
well.
going to
is-
say, we've also noticed on this tour that we've got a really strong fan base of great people, you know, who like our
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
And for that, it's kind of worth doing for as long as we can do it, you know.
Right.
And I think we're in a good place at the moment.
yeah.
And your set list reflects that you see the band as a kind of continuum, really, don't you? Because it's like there's ideas there, there's Shatterproof songs there, and there are some new ones
There's
as
some
well.
new ones, yeah.
Yeah. How do you work out which ones you're going to try out now? Is it a sort of last minute
We just
decision?
argue backstage for,
We
for
just
10
did it
minutes.
about 20 minutes ago.
Really? So that one's out of the way, is it? Yeah. So which ones are you doing tonight? Which
I can't
the ones
remember.
that you
I normally don't know until I get on stage and look at the set list.
right?
And then you get it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And also you did the the Carling festivals this summer.
Yeah.
You still love that kind of
Amazing.
big vibe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's our 4th year there in a row, and yeah, it's great playing there. I mean, in a lot of ways it's like a home gig, isn't it? Because you know all your mates come from London and around all the areas that they live, and all your family and everything. So it's great to play at a festival.
And nothing really beats walking out on stage in front of 30, 40,000 people.
Right.
And look at that, that's big.
Pretty amazing feeling.
Yeah. And record company wise, at the moment, obviously this tour has been honing the next set of songs for the next album. When are you going to start thinking, perhaps we ought to be making a few phone calls?
I think we're going to do it when we've got the songs we're happy with for the next record. I think once we have that set of songs, then we'll play them to people. Because obviously what people have said, great, we're interested, but we need to hear new songs, so that's what we're doing. And we're not in any rush to do it. As a band, we've never been in any rush to do anything, which I think has gone in our favour in a number of ways, and I think we're trying to keep that attitude.
Right.
So we're going to keep touring and keep writing until we've got a third record that we're happy with. And I don't think we're going to put something out just because we feel we have to.
No, I think we're going to try and build it up again, like we did on the first album. Not rush into anything, kind of recreate ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's touring also in Europe and America?
We'll tour anywhere we can.
Yeah.
Any plans for the next sort of 6 months or so?
Yeah, well, Sony never did anything with us in America, so I think we were able to release our last 2 records there through our own means. So we're looking into that, and maybe that's something that will happen next year.
Yeah.
Right. And Europe?
And Europe.
For Europe. Yeah, we've done a bit of work in Europe, so we're going to hope to go back. And,
we've done a few really good support tours there, but then we've never really been able to follow it up because of lack of support. So if we can get that in place, or we'll just go and do it ourselves. It's like, it just takes a van, doesn't it? So if we can get the shows, we'll just go and do them.
So the next 6 months is going to be touring these songs until they're ready for an album, and then you're ready to go.
Pretty much.
Good luck, and thanks very much for your time.
No worries, thank you.